Have you ever wondered if your addiction, that constant struggle that seems impossible to overcome, might contain a divine message waiting to be discovered? Carl Jung, the revolutionary psychoanalyst who delved into the depths of the unconscious and explored the spiritual dimension of the human psyche, offers us a transformative perspective. That compulsion that dominates you, that behavior that shames you, that habit that seems impossible to break, could be carrying a spiritual calling encoded specifically for you. Today, we'll reveal the surprising truth about how your addiction, viewed through a Jungian lens, can be understood not just as a problem, but as an enigmatic portal to your deepest purpose. What seemed to be your greatest curse may contain, hidden within its depths, the divine message your soul has been waiting to decipher. A calling that, once understood, can transform your suffering into a path toward authenticity, healing, and connection with something far greater than yourself. What if the very thing causing you the most pain is actually trying to save you? This sounds impossible when you're in the grip of an addiction. The shame, the secrecy, the feeling of being trapped in a cycle you can't break, these don't feel like salvation. They feel like a prison. But what Jung discovered through his work with thousands of troubled souls was something revolutionary. Our greatest struggles often carry our greatest gifts. Think about it. Why this particular addiction? Why this specific behavior? Of all the ways your pain could manifest, why did it choose this form? Jung believed there are no random psychological events. Every symptom, every compulsion has meaning. Your addiction didn't just happen to you by chance. It emerged from the deepest parts of your psyche for a reason. The first step to hearing the message is understanding that your addiction isn't your enemy. It's a messenger, a very persistent, often destructive messenger, but a messenger nonetheless. When you keep reaching for that drink, that drug, that person, that behavior that you know is harmful, your psyche is trying desperately to communicate something vital that your conscious mind refuses to hear. Jung introduced the concept of the shadow. Those parts of ourselves we reject, deny, and push away. The parts we're ashamed of, the desires we refuse to acknowledge, the emotions we were told were unacceptable. These rejected aspects don't disappear when we turn away from them. They go underground, they grow stronger in the darkness, and eventually they find a way to be heard, often through compulsive behaviors we can't control. Your addiction might be showing you where you've become disconnected from yourself. Perhaps you were taught to ignore your emotions, so they speak through substance abuse instead. Maybe you learned to repress your creative spirit, so it emerges distorted through obsessive behaviors. Or possibly you denied your need for connection, so it manifests as dependency on something that gives temporary relief from loneliness. The divine message isn't in the substance or behavior itself. It's in what that substance or behavior temporarily provides. Does alcohol give you courage you otherwise lack? Does food comfort you when you feel empty inside? Does gambling give you a sense of possibility in a life that feels predetermined? Does your phone give you connection when you feel isolated? These temporary solutions point toward your real needs, needs that are valid, important, and sacred. Jung believed that addictions often arise when we've strayed from our authentic path, our individuation process, as he called it. This is the journey of becoming who we're truly meant to be, rather than who our family, society, or even our own limited thinking believes we should be. Your addiction might be a sign that you've wandered too far from your true self, your genuine calling. The painful symptoms of addiction, the cravings, the withdrawal, the relentless pull, are proportional to how important the message is. The more intense your struggle, the more significant the calling trying to reach you. This is why willpower alone rarely works against serious addiction. You're not just fighting a bad habit, you're fighting a message your soul needs you to hear. This message isn't always what we expect. Sometimes it's about pain we've been running from for decades. Other times it's about gifts we've been afraid to claim. It might be about trauma that needs healing or potential that needs expression. Whatever it is, it matters deeply to your wholeness as a human being. Jung recognized that meaningful transformation often begins with suffering. He saw that our psyche will create crisis when necessary to force growth. Your addiction may be creating the exact crisis you need to finally address what you've been avoiding. The pain has a purpose, to wake you up to aspects of yourself and your life that can no longer be ignored. The divine nature of this message lies in its connection to your wholeness. Jung believed that the psyche naturally strives toward completeness and health in a process he called self-regulation. Your addiction, paradoxically, may be part of this self-regulating system, a dysfunctional attempt to move toward wholeness when healthier pathways have been blocked. Understanding your addiction as a message doesn't minimize its destructiveness or instantly cure it, but it does change your relationship with it. Instead of seeing it only as an enemy to be defeated, you can approach it as a messenger to be listened to. This shift alone can begin to loosen its grip. Behind every addiction lies an emptiness, a void that aches to be filled. This emptiness isn't just a personal failing or a chemical imbalance. According to Jung's understanding, it can be a sacred space, a hollow carved out by the absence of meaning, purpose, and spiritual connection in our lives. This void isn't an accident or a punishment. It might be the very thing that propels us toward our highest calling. Modern life has stripped away many of the rituals, myths, and spiritual practices that once gave human existence meaning and structure. Jung recognized this loss as a profound problem of our time. We live in what he might call a spiritually impoverished age, an era of material abundance but spiritual hunger. We have information but not wisdom, entertainment but not enchantment, connection but not communion. Into this vacuum, addiction flows like water seeking the lowest point. When the higher needs of the soul go unmet, we seek lower substitutes. The temporary high, the momentary escape, the brief comfort, these become replacements for the lasting joy, genuine freedom, and true belonging our spirits actually crave. Your compulsion may be pointing directly to what your soul hungers for most deeply. This sacred void takes different forms in different people. For some, it's an emptiness where community should be, a profound loneliness that substances temporarily ease. For others, it's the absence of meaningful work, a sense of uselessness that compulsive behaviors briefly distract from. It might be missing creativity, adventure, intimacy, or purpose. Whatever shape your particular void takes, it's not just a random hole in your life. It's a space waiting to be filled with something specific, something that resonates with your unique calling. Jung believed we all have a vocation, not just a job, but a calling that emerges from our deepest self. This vocation isn't necessarily grandiose or world-changing. It might be as simple as creating beauty in everyday objects, bringing warmth to human interactions, or pursuing knowledge in a particular field. What matters is that it's authentically yours, a path that allows your unique gifts to flow into the world. When we ignore this calling, our psyche doesn't simply let it go. Instead, it creates symptoms, including addictive patterns, that force us to pay attention. Your compulsion might be a distorted version of your true vocation. The energy that should flow into your authentic life purpose gets channeled into the addiction instead. The obsessive nature of addiction is a clue to how powerful this blocked energy actually is. The intensity of addiction often matches the significance of the calling being ignored. Minor deviations from our path might create minor symptoms, but when we've strayed far from our true nature and purpose, the psyche responds with equal force. The depth of your struggle may reflect the importance of the message your soul is trying to deliver. This perspective transforms how we view recovery. Getting sober or breaking free from compulsive behavior isn't just about stopping something negative. It's about creating space for something positive to emerge. As you release the addiction, you're not just giving something up, you're making room for your authentic calling to reveal itself. The very energy that once fueled your addiction can be redirected toward your true purpose. Jung understood that meaningful transformation requires more than just behavior change. It demands a shift in consciousness, a new way of understanding yourself and your place in the world. Recovery becomes a spiritual journey, not just a medical or psychological one. This journey isn't about returning to who you were before the addiction. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. The connection between addiction and spiritual calling appears throughout human history. Many spiritual teachers and healers began their journey in darkness, struggling with their own demons before finding their path. Their suffering wasn't separate from their eventual purpose. It was integral to it. Your addiction may be preparing you for your own unique contribution, developing in you the sensitivity, depth, and compassion that only come through wrestling with personal darkness. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the Sim Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. Recognizing the sacred nature of your void doesn't mean passively accepting addiction. On the contrary, it means engaging with it more honestly and deeply. It means asking questions like, what am I really hungry for? What am I trying to numb myself against? What part of me is trying to speak through this compulsion? What would my life look like if this energy were channeled towards something life-giving instead of life-draining? As you move through the darkness of addiction toward the light of your calling, you may discover that your greatest wound becomes your greatest gift. The very sensitivity that made you vulnerable to addiction may become your greatest strength as you recover. Your familiarity with suffering may become the source of your compassion for others. Your journey through the underworld may become the story that helps others find their way. This transformation from addiction to calling is what Jung might see as the alchemical process of turning lead into gold. Not by denying or destroying the lead, but by recognizing its hidden potential and subjecting it to the transformative fire of consciousness. The human soul speaks in symbols, not sentences. This is something Jung discovered through decades of working with dreams, fantasies, art, and yes, addictions. Your dependency isn't just a behavioral problem, it's symbolic communication from the depths of your psyche. Learning to interpret this symbolism is like learning a forgotten language, the native tongue of your innermost self. Every addiction has its own symbolic fingerprint. Alcohol dissolves boundaries, creating temporary freedom from an overly rigid consciousness. Gambling offers the illusion of control over fate. Food provides comfort and fullness when emotional nourishment is missing. Each substance or behavior carries specific symbolic meaning that offers clues to what your soul is truly seeking. Jung introduced the revolutionary concept of archetypes, universal patterns and images that appear in myths, dreams, and human behavior across cultures. These archetypal energies also emerge in our addictions. The shadow archetype often drives compulsive behavior, containing all we've rejected in ourselves. The inner child might be seeking comfort through addiction when adult life becomes overwhelming. The trickster archetype might express itself through patterns of self-sabotage that keep undermining your recovery efforts. Understanding the archetypal forces at play in your dependency helps you recognize that what you're experiencing isn't just personal failure. It's part of the universal human struggle. You're not alone in this battle. You're engaging with powerful currents of the collective unconscious that humans have wrestled with throughout history. Your specific addiction pattern contains personalized symbols too. The timing of your cravings, the situations that trigger you, the thoughts that precede a relapse, these aren't random. They form a pattern that, when decoded, reveals precisely what your soul is trying to communicate. This is why mindfulness is so powerful in recovery. By paying attention to the exact nature of your addiction, you begin to crack the code your soul is using. Dreams offer another window into this communication. Jung placed enormous importance on dreams as messages from the unconscious. During recovery, your dreams may speak directly about your addiction, often in symbolic form. A dream about drowning might reflect feeling overwhelmed without your substance. A dream about being lost could signify the disorientation of early sobriety. These aren't just random neural firings, they're your psyche processing the journey and offering guidance. Synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, often increase during recovery. You might randomly encounter a person who shares exactly what you need to hear, or discover a book that speaks directly to your struggle, or notice patterns of numbers or symbols that feel significant. Jung saw these synchronicities as moments when the inner world of psyche and the outer world of events momentarily align, creating flashes of meaning that guide our path. The most powerful symbol in your addiction might be the substance or behavior itself. What does it represent to you? What god or goddess might it embody? Alcohol has been associated with Dionysus, the god of ecstasy and release. Shopping addiction might connect to abundance goddesses. Understanding the archetypal energy you're drawn to helps you find healthier ways to honor that same energy in your life. Recovery requires developing fluency in this soul language. Rather than just battling cravings, you learn to ask, what is this craving really about? What deeper need is expressing itself in this moment? This shift transforms recovery from mere abstinence into a journey of spiritual translation, learning to meet your soul's needs directly rather than through the distorted medium of addiction. The symbols in your addiction often point to polarities in your psyche, opposing forces seeking integration. If your conscious life is extremely controlled, your addiction might express the wild, chaotic energy you've denied. If you present as perpetually strong and capable, your dependency might reveal your disowned vulnerability. Jung believed psychological health comes from integrating these opposites rather than identifying exclusively with one side. Your body itself speaks this symbolic language. Physical symptoms that accompany addiction and withdrawal aren't just chemical processes, they're somatic expressions of psychological content. The shaking hands of alcohol withdrawal might reflect the trembling fear of facing life unmedicated. The headaches of caffeine withdrawal could symbolize the pain of slowing down a racing mind. Honoring these physical expressions as meaningful helps integrate body and mind in recovery. As you become fluent in your soul's language, you'll notice communication becoming clearer. The desperate screaming of severe addiction often softens into more subtle messages as you prove you're finally listening. Your relationship with your unconscious transforms from adversarial to collaborative. Rather than your unconscious having to create extreme symptoms to get your attention, it can communicate through gentler means, intuitions, creative impulses, meaningful emotions. This new relationship with the symbolic realm doesn't end when addiction releases its grip. It becomes a lifelong dialogue with the deeper dimensions of yourself. Many who recover from addiction discover they've gained a profound spiritual literacy that continues to guide them long after the compulsive behavior has subsided. What began as a painful necessity becomes a precious gift. The ability to understand and work with the symbolic language of the soul. Transformation rarely comes through comfort. This is perhaps the most challenging spiritual truth about addiction, that your deepest suffering might be the very doorway to your greatest awakening. Jung understood this paradox well. He saw that the psyche often leads us into darkness, not to destroy us, but to remake us. This is the divine paradox at the heart of addiction. What seems like your destruction might actually be your salvation in disguise. The intensity of addiction creates the necessary pressure for profound change. Without this level of suffering, Many people never question their fundamental assumptions about themselves and life. They continue in comfortable unconsciousness, never discovering their deeper capacities. Your addiction has created a crisis that demands resolution. It has backed you into a corner where transformation is no longer optional. It's essential for survival. Jung identified this pattern in mythology and called it the night sea journey, the hero's descent into darkness before rebirth. This archetypal journey appears across cultures: Jonah in the whale, Persephone in the underworld, Christ in the tomb. Each story tells of a necessary period of suffering and apparent defeat that precedes transformation. Your addiction represents your personal night sea journey, a descent that feels like failure but contains the seeds of renewal. The specific form your addiction takes reveals the precise nature of transformation needed. Substance dependencies often point to a disconnection from authentic feeling, the need to reconnect with genuine emotion rather than numbing it. Process addictions like work or exercise might indicate imbalance between doing and being. Sexual compulsions might point to integration needed between physical desire and emotional intimacy. The pain shows exactly where healing is required. What makes this journey so difficult is that it demands surrendering the very defenses we've built to protect ourselves. The addiction itself has become both wound and bandage, causing pain while simultaneously providing a way to cope with pain. Removing this protection feels life-threatening. The ego resists fiercely, convinced that letting go means annihilation. This is why recovery can't be achieved through willpower alone. It requires a profound surrender that feels counter to survival. Jung recognized that this surrender has spiritual dimensions. Many recovery traditions call it hitting bottom, the moment when the ego finally acknowledges it cannot solve the problem through its usual strategies. This is not just psychological defeat, it's the spiritual experience of recognizing a need for help beyond your limited self. It creates an opening for what Jung might call the self, the organizing center of the entire personality that transcends yet includes the ego. The transformative power of this surrender explains why so many recovery stories include spiritual awakening. The cracks in your defensive armor become the very places where light enters. Your addiction has created precisely these cracks, weakening your illusion of control, challenging your self-image, bringing you to your knees. What appeared to be your destruction becomes the necessary condition for something new to emerge. This emergence often follows what Jung called enantiodromia, the principle that anything pushed to its extreme eventually turns into its opposite. The darkness of addiction, when fully experienced rather than avoided, can transform into extraordinary light. The isolation of dependency can lead to profound connection. The self-hatred of the addict can become radical self-acceptance and compassion. These aren't just poetic metaphors, they're psychological realities Jung observed repeatedly in the transformation process. The divine aspect of this paradox lies in its purposefulness. Jung believed that the psyche naturally moves toward wholeness, what he called individuation. Your addiction, viewed from this perspective, isn't random suffering or punishment for weakness. It's part of an intelligent process guiding you toward becoming your complete self. The pain has direction and meaning, even when it feels most senseless and cruel. This journey transforms not just behavior, but identity. Many who recover from addiction report feeling like they've become different people, not by rejecting who they were, but by incorporating aspects of themselves they'd denied. The judged becomes compassionate, the controlling becomes surrendered, the isolated becomes connected. These aren't just changes in attitude. They represent fundamental shifts in how a person experiences themselves and their place in the world. Physical transformation accompanies this psychological rebirth. The body that was once the site of addiction becomes the vessel for new life. Energy previously consumed by dependency becomes available for creativity, service, and presence. Many in recovery discover physical vitality they hadn't experienced since childhood. This renewal isn't separate from spiritual transformation. It's part of the same holistic process Jung saw as intrinsic to human development. The ultimate paradox is that many who have made this journey wouldn't trade it, despite its difficulties. They recognize that their addiction, with all its pain, led them to depths of understanding and heights of awareness they might never have reached otherwise. What seemed like a curse revealed itself as a difficult blessing. The divine message hidden in their greatest pain became the foundation of their most authentic life. This doesn't mean addiction is necessary for transformation or that suffering should be romanticized. Not everyone completes this journey successfully. But for those who do, the experience of having their greatest pain become their greatest portal reflects Jung's profound insight, that the psyche has an inherent wisdom that sometimes leads us through darkness to reach unprecedented light. The shadow is where addiction thrives. Jung defined the shadow as the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, and pushed into unconsciousness. These disowned aspects don't disappear. They grow more powerful in the dark, eventually erupting in ways we can't control. Your addiction has been the shadow's playground, but what if it could become the shadow's redemption? Moving beyond the shadow doesn't mean destroying it, but bringing it into the light, where its energy can be transformed. The first step beyond the shadow is simple but revolutionary: acknowledgement without judgment. Most addicts live in perpetual self-condemnation, creating a cycle where shame fuels addiction and addiction creates more shame. Jung observed that healing begins when we can look at our darkest aspects with compassion instead of criticism. This doesn't mean approving of destructive behavior, but recognizing the wounded human beneath the behavior. What makes this step so difficult is that the shadow contains not just what we consider bad about ourselves, but also disowned power, creativity, and vitality. Jung noted that our brightest qualities can be as threatening to our limited self-concept as our darkest ones. Your addiction may have been channeling not just pain, but also intensity, passion, and energy that felt too big for your everyday life. Recovery means reclaiming these positive energies alongside healing the negative ones. Shadow integration happens through conscious relationship, not elimination. Jung would suggest speaking to your addiction as you might address a troubled but important part of yourself. What does it want? What is it afraid of? What gifts is it offering in distorted form? This dialogue transforms your relationship with addiction from a battle against an enemy to a conversation with a misguided aspect of yourself. Dreams become essential guides in this journey beyond shadow. Jung saw dreams as communications from the unconscious, offering images and scenarios that help integrate shadow material. Recovery dreams often feature symbols of the addiction transforming, perhaps a bottle becoming a fountain or a prison becoming a garden. These aren't just nighttime stories, but psychic maps showing how transformation is progressing beneath conscious awareness. The shadow's integration follows a pattern Jung identified in alchemy, the ancient practice he saw as a symbolic system describing psychological transformation. First comes the nigredo, or blackening, fully acknowledging the darkness. Then the albedo, or whitening, seeing the potential for purification. Finally, the rubedo, or reddening, when new life emerges from the process. Your recovery journey naturally follows this alchemical sequence, moving from darkness through cleansing to vitality. Creative expression accelerates this alchemical process. Jung pioneered the use of art in psychological healing, recognizing that images can access and transform unconscious content more directly than words. Drawing, writing, movement, music, These aren't just adjuncts to recovery, but central practices. They give form to shadow energies that previously could only express themselves through addiction. As shadow integration progresses, synchronicities often increase, meaningful coincidences that seem to guide your journey. You might randomly encounter a person who becomes crucial to your recovery, or discover a book that speaks directly to your struggle, or notice patterns of symbols that feel personally significant. Jung saw these synchronicities not as supernatural, but as moments when psyche and world align, creating flashes of meaning that guide your path. The most profound shadow integration happens in relationship. Jung emphasized that we cannot see our own shadow clearly without others who reflect it back to us with compassion. This is why recovery communities are so powerful. They create spaces where shadow aspects can be revealed without shame. Being truly known in your darkest places without rejection heals the original wounds that drove addiction. Beyond the shadow lies what Jung called the self, the organizing center of the entire personality that transcends yet includes the ego. Contact with this deeper center often brings a profound sense of meaning and purpose. Many in recovery report feeling guided by something larger than themselves, experiencing life as a meaningful journey rather than random suffering. This sense of purpose isn't escapism, but engagement with life at a deeper level. Physical transformation accompanies this psychological journey. The body that was once the battleground of addiction becomes the temple of new life. Energy previously consumed by dependency becomes available for creativity, service, and presence. Many in recovery discover vitality they hadn't experienced since childhood. This renewal isn't separate from spiritual transformation. It's part of the holistic process Jung saw as natural to human development. The most surprising discovery beyond the shadow is that your addiction contained not just darkness, but light in disguise. The very qualities that made you vulnerable to addiction, sensitivity, intensity, spiritual hunger, emotional depth, become your greatest strengths in recovery. Your familiarity with suffering becomes the source of your compassion for others. Your journey through the underworld becomes the story that helps others find their way. This transformation doesn't mean the shadow disappears. Jung was clear that shadow integration is ongoing. New layers continually emerge as consciousness expands. But what changes is your relationship with these emerging aspects. Rather than being controlled by unconscious forces, you develop the capacity to work consciously with all parts of yourself, transforming potential destruction into creative power. The ultimate journey beyond shadow is what Jung called individuation, becoming the unique individual you were born to be. Not through conformity to social expectations or spiritual ideals, but through honest reckoning with your specific nature. Your addiction, paradoxically, has been preparing you for this authenticity by making it impossible to maintain false images of yourself. What seemed like your greatest failure becomes the foundation for your most genuine life. At the heart of addiction lies disconnection from self, others, meaning, and the sacred dimension of existence. Jung recognized that modern life had created a spiritual crisis, where we've gained material comfort but lost our sense of belonging to something larger. Your addiction has been both symptom of this disconnection and an unconscious attempt to restore it. True healing comes through reconnection, not just stopping addictive behavior, but rebuilding these essential bonds. The first reconnection happens within yourself. Addiction creates internal fragmentation, parts of you at war with other parts. Recovery means rebuilding relationship between your conscious mind and the unconscious forces expressing themselves through addiction. Dreams provide a direct channel for this inner reconnection, offering meaningful communications from the unconscious that often show new possibilities before your waking mind can grasp them. The body plays a crucial role in reconnection. Addiction often involves profound disconnection from physical sensation. Recovery means gradually rebuilding this relationship, learning to feel without being overwhelmed. Practices that restore embodied awareness, movement, breath work, mindful eating, become essential to full recovery. Connection with others forms another crucial dimension. Addiction thrives in isolation, creating cycles of shame and withdrawal. Recovery communities have powerful effects because they restore the social bonds that addiction severed. Being truly seen and accepted helps you reconnect with disowned parts of yourself. The natural world offers another pathway. Many in recovery report that time in nature reduces cravings and restores perspective, reconnecting them to rhythms more fundamental than the addiction cycle. For many, this journey leads to what Jung called religious experience, direct encounter with something that transcends the individual ego. These aren't supernatural, but contact with deeper layers of the psyche. Many report moments of profound connection with something greater than themselves, experiences that fundamentally transform their relationship with addiction. Service to others becomes a powerful form of reconnection. Many find that experiences that once seemed like useless suffering become valuable wisdom when shared with others still suffering. This transformation of personal pain into service creates profound meaning. The ultimate reconnection happens when you recognize that your addiction itself contained a divine call. The very intensity of your suffering created the conditions for a depth of awakening that might not have come any other way. Your addiction hasn't been meaningless suffering, but a difficult initiation leading to a more authentic and connected life. As you stand at this crossroads between addiction and awakening, remember that what feels like your greatest curse may actually contain your most powerful blessing, a divine message encoded specifically for your soul. If Jung's wisdom resonates with the battle you're fighting right now, I invite you to join our community of seekers by subscribing to this channel. Together, we'll continue exploring the hidden messages in our deepest struggles, transforming our wounds into wisdom and discovering the sacred purpose behind our pain. You are not broken, you are being called to something greater. Subscribe now to walk this path of transformation with us.